Both of my parents were in and out of jail, which I didn't realize at the time because they were trying to hide it from me. But there were absences from both of them at different periods of time where I couldn't talk to them. I didn't know where they went. And that left a huge mark on me. I've never talked about any of this stuff before, so it's very interesting. I don't know how deep you want to get into this.
Oh, this is just the beginning. Elise Michaels, I'm absolutely delighted to have you on my show, the Purpose-Led Leadership Podcast. We've been connected and friends for the last couple of years. You've done some coaching for me. We've done some stuff together. For those that don't know you, and you've got a big following, tell the audience what you do, and then we'll take it from there.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. As you said, we've known each other for a couple of years now, just via social media and how things have changed. But we became acquainted because I am a men's mental health coach. For those of you who don't know me, for the last 2.5 years, I've been guiding men through a trauma-informed container, helping them assess the mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, relational aspects of their lives to become better fathers, spouses, and men. And so here we are 2.5 years later, still building the empire stronger than ever. And it's been the best thing I've ever done in my life.
I mean, I love what you're doing. I think, as we both know, and a lot of people know, that men tend to kind of shy away from their feelings. And I think I don't think there's many of you around, which I quite like. We'll delve into that a little bit more deeper, but I want to get to know more about what you do specifically, but also you as a human being. So I ask my guests all this. If you can go back almost as far as school, paint us a picture of your life and your journey and any kind of adversity.
Well, it's very interesting that you would ask that, because no one ever gets deep into these questions. So I always kind of skirt over my own life and just say I had a dysfunctional childhood. But if you want to dive a little bit deeper into it, which is what you're asking, I had a pretty dysfunctional childhood. There was not any like physical abuse or anything like that, but two parents who were unwell as far as, knowing their behaviors, knowing how to regulate, two people just in survival mode and completely opposites, not compatible with each other. And as children, you suffer the consequences of your parents' inability to communicate correctly, to self-regulate, and you develop your own survival mechanisms and behaviors based on that. So that's why I take all my clients back. It's not like, hey, just tell me your worst memory of your relationship with your parents. It's understanding the patterns and habits and behaviors that are created just based on, how do I receive love? How do I receive validation and acknowledgement from this environment I'm growing up in? So parents divorced at a very young age. That didn't really have an impact, but my dad, both of my parents were in and out of jail, which I didn't realize at the time because they were trying to hide it from me. But there were absences from both of them at different periods of time where I couldn't talk to them. I didn't know where they went. And that left a huge mark on me. I've never talked about any of this stuff before, so it's very interesting. I don't know how deep you want to get into this.
Oh, this is just the beginning.
So yeah, just a result of that type of lifestyle, becoming like my parents becoming bankrupt, losing the house, moving into a very small apartment. And, but I was just like a happy kid. I didn't know anything else, but I was very, very self-sufficient because of all this, because no one has time to pay attention. I'm middle child. No one has time to pay attention to the middle child when all this chaos is going on. Right. So that was like the foundation of my life.
So, I mean, that resonates with me quite a lot. I mean, I put a post out recently about being abandoned and kind of almost having to be a parent myself at the age of 3. And it feels like from a very young age, you had to adopt that kind of skill set.
Right. So, yeah.
How has that played out? Because for me, it turned me into a bit of a people pleaser and putting other people first. And I think by the very nature of what you're doing, you become master at kind of that because you've gone through it yourself. But what's the obvious negatives are, there's going to be some trauma and abandonment issues. But in terms of putting yourself first and not having a parent, how has that affected you? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So I love that question. So obviously I became hyper independent in the way of, feminine taking on the masculine, right? Like,
Yes.
I'm going to work myself. I got this. Traveling everywhere. So I didn't necessarily feel like I was a people pleaser until I started learning these tools and got into a relationship where I realized that once I'm in relationship, that is when all of those tendencies for me would come out. I would change myself for the other person because I didn't want them to leave. I didn't want to give them a reason to feel like, because I wanted to be the favorite. I have this need to be the favorite because I was so looked over by my sibling. Like my parents would, look at my siblings instead of me, or I just felt like I wasn't important enough to be paid attention to. It's kind of like crazy to like just bring this up in the open. So in relationship, I just like wanted to do everything I possibly could to be the favorite. So it was really developed into a codependency type of thing where it's just like I would do everything I could. Like I would do the dishes and the laundry, and I'm like, oh, I'm chill. I'm the chill person. I don't have needs. But like what you're doing is you're really self-abandoning. You're not putting yourself first. You're not putting your own needs first. So to the outside world, I'm like, yeah, I'm independent. I don't need anybody and I'm good. And I did all these things that I wanted to do. But once I got in a relationship, it was like a total flip.
But that's bad enough. But before that, because of the way you've been wired to think and feel, well, from my point of view, that was very similar, but I attracted the wrong person in the first place. So kind of the person I attracted, it led to that anyway, because I only felt I was worthy of that kind of situation, right? Was that the same for you?
Well, absolutely. We always attract what our behaviors are demonstrating, right? So our relationships were totally different the way that they played out. But my partner during that time was a perfect person who needed like a mother. Right. So I was doing all of the motherly things and they had, receded into their feminine, just being taken care of. So they didn't see a problem with it because that was what they were used to. Right. So, of course, we attract the perfect partner for us.
You mentioned that you didn't feel you were kind of happy-go-lucky kid, but you kind of now you know exactly what you went through and you're probably still learning, healing and, adapting to that. But I felt very inferior, but I didn't know any different. Can you sort of remember kind of any kind of feelings of anxiety or mental health problems or challenges or just feeling different? Because it must have affected you back then. Maybe you didn't know, but maybe you did know subconsciously. Don't know.
Oh, absolutely. I was totally depressed, but like, I just thought that's how it was. I just thought I was a sad person and I would journal a lot. It's funny because I don't have basically any like relics from my childhood. A few years ago, I found a journal that I'd written from like 6th grade all the way to senior year. And I threw it away because it was so painful. Like everything that I was writing about when I was young was just pain. Like parents not showing up for my birthday or like, it just was like sad. But like my personality naturally it's like a golden retriever, right? It's to be happy. It's to be go lucky. So like there was one part of me that was always happy, but there was one part of me that was always very alone and felt very abandoned and very sad. But I just thought that was me.
Yeah. How did that affect you touched on like relationships in terms of what about confidence? And I maybe very shy actually. What about you?
I appeared to be very confident. Like I didn't really care what anybody thought. But it was like, I love myself. I hate myself. So I didn't feel like I looked good. I didn't feel like my body was good enough. I didn't feel like I was really good enough, but I just put on this persona of I don't care.
Yeah, because you had nobody to kind of nurture you, nobody to kind of like, there was no consistency, no kind of routine, and you didn't know what was good or bad, right? I guess.
Right. It's very odd to like hear this displayed back to me because I've never talked about this stuff before. So in a way, you're almost like kind of validating my experience, even though you didn't know exactly what went on, which is very interesting.
Is that a good thing? You comfortable with that or not?
It's just an interesting experience to have. When you do this work, you are constantly the validator. And I'm sure that you get this a lot. A lot of people listening to this, I'm sure, are the person that people go to. But like, I literally get paid for this and that I've trained for this. And these are the tools. Yeah. And you're not my therapist, but just me talking about this in general and having you validate it back as a normal person is just interesting.
Yeah, I think it's because I've been through a similar thing before, and
Yeah.
what I wouldn't do is rescue anybody. You know, that's not helpful either. But
Right.
I can just feel and see what that's like, and I think it's a bizarre thing as as coaches. You know, if we heeded half the advice we gave out, we'd be laughing. And so sometimes I think I've got my own coach. I think you said you got your own coach. I mean, we've got to talk about these things, right? Otherwise, we all go pop, we're human beings, right?
Mm. Well, and I think it's also important to talk about too, because I've never talked about this stuff, not because like I don't want to, but just because I maybe found it irrelevant. But the reason why I'm opening up so much now is because I think it's important for people to know at a certain point, like that A, they're not
Yeah.
alone, but B, that like there's a lot of stigma around therapists who have other therapists and their lives are messed up.
Yeah.
And why would you go to a therapist like that? But there's a lot of evidence and experience.
Yes, of course. When you say relevant, though, that's an interesting. Why do you say it's relevant? I think it's super relevant. I mean, it's super powerful and super resonating.
I don't know. I just felt maybe I just feel like it's not about me when I'm trying to communicate to the audience. I just really want to focus, but maybe that's just part of me growing up. It's not about me trying to adapt to the audience, right?
Well, I think it's not for me to judge or psychoanalyze it, but actually, the stuff you've gone through can really help other people. And I think that's part of the reason why people ask me, why am I so open online? It's not that this is going to sound a little bit. I know it's my podcast. I'm talking to you, but I just want to go down this road a little bit. I do believe each individual has certain gifts, and there's a duty to there's a duty of me to kind of share and teach and guide people. I don't mean that in an egotistical way. I just feel that there's a calling for me there. I don't wake up one day and go, right, I'm going to share my life. I just feel as if I need to do that because it actually helps me. And I do believe the more people that do that kind of thing, because I think not everyone, a lot of people in this world are going through day to day, week to week, not even knowing why the fuck they're doing what they're doing. There's no purpose, there's no substance. And I think it's really important to encourage this kind of stuff personally. So that's just my view.
Yeah, well, absolutely. Well, you're the first person who's asked me to dive into it. So I'm open, but it's very interesting to do.
Yeah. I always think that you can't really go forward. You need to go back before you go forward. But once you've done that, you've got to then create a new chapter in your life. So let's carry on the journey. As you talked about kind of your childhood. So what age did your parents get divorced, and what other stuff happened to lead you up to what you're doing now? Got a long way to go yet.
Well, they got married when I was in first grade and divorced probably when I was in third grade. Right. And there was a huge catalyst that caused that I am not willing to reveal to the internet, just for protection of my parents. Sure. But I did not start my healing journey truly until I turned 25, I think. I'd always been into personal development and self-help, but like more along business. I was so focused on how can I make money? How can I do a business? Because I grew up with like this frugal lifestyle because my parents lost everything. And I just didn't want to live that life. I wanted to be rich. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to do something important because I wanted to be the favorite, right? I want all the attention. Yeah. And so my whole life was just like focused on self-improvement. But like the mental aspect for me was like when I was 25 and I had I'd lost a relationship that was really important to me. And I said, okay, I cannot keep repeating these same cycles. I don't know what the cycles are, but like, let me dive into this. And that's when I got my therapist, and she was very helpful. She's still my therapist today, but it didn't solve everything. And that's when I dove into the mental self-help courses like neuroscience, RBT, relationship science, trauma therapy, and started to recognize within myself, oh my God, there's a system. You can solve this with a system. My logic brain was like, this is amazing. And if I can do this for myself, I have to do it for other people. Like you said, it's a duty. Now that I know how to evade pain for years, like why not share that with others? And so that's when everything changed for me.
Why men specifically?
Well, they reached out to me.
So men were coming to you, and then you built it from that kind of.
Yes, that's the thing I think a lot of people don't understand. I just didn't see men and target them. I was targeting women, actually, posting videos on LinkedIn. I didn't name women specifically, but I was posting about ideas and realizations and teaching things, and only men were the ones reaching out to me. And I realized, oh my God, they really don't have someone to serve them a lot when it comes to mental health. And I was like, should I be that person? I don't know. I was very hesitant for like 6 months. Only my clients were men. And then I finally just said, hey, I'm going to be a men's coach. I'm going to study how they think. I'm going to study how they learn. I'm going to develop a system for them specifically because women have enough support. And I'm just going to be this doorway. And it was the best decision ever.
It's great. I think this is. I'll try not to sound too controversial. And I'm a big advocate of women. I back women. I don't stand for any misogyny, and people know that. But also, I call people out as well. I think there's a huge misconception and misunderstanding and some injustices for men that are swept under the carpet. And I think sometimes women can jump on a bandwagon about men, and we do have the rough end of the deal as well. And things like parental alienation, things like mental health and well-being. I want to get your lens around feminism and toxic positivity and just the stuff around. I do think men get a hard bargain, but it's portrayed as it's the women, and I think there's more to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and you can be as controversial with me as you want, because I think that there's so much to each side, right? And it's stuff that we have to dive into. I totally agree with you, and that's, like the more I am a men's coach, the more I see the unfairness in certain situations, in, like you said, in custody and child support. And I'm really glad that you brought this up at this time, because in the United States recently, Roe versus Wade has been overturned.
Wow.
And
we had it over here. Well, we're big over here, but massive where you are, obviously.
Yeah. But the thing with that is, I think a lot of men who support that do not understand how it is going to negatively impact men, because we're already at this stage where we feel an imbalance of support for men, right? Yeah. And we're going into this wave where it is more acceptable for men to be sharing their emotions and being understood. And just as we're warming up to that, this bill gets overturned, where women's bodily autonomy is taken away. And where do you think all that rage is going to be pointed towards? Women are not going to turn against other women. Right. Women are it's going to perpetuate this current unfair hatred towards men. Yeah. Not all men passed that law over, but now it is like, oh my God, our rights are being taken away from us again and decided by someone who's not a woman. How unfair is this? And men don't understand. It's also going to perpetuate, if women cannot choose to have an abortion, guess what that means? More fathers who don't want to be fathers, more forced fathers who have to pay forced child support, more depressed men. Male suicide rate is already at 3/4. What do you think is going to be now? It's going to be 4 out of 4, right? And also the things that, sorry, I'm just going off on a rampage with this because it's like so upsetting. It's like so upsetting as a woman. And having had this experience, thank God I was there during a time that I was able to make this choice for myself. And I cannot imagine, like being raped or having an ectopic pregnancy and being forced to, you can die from an ectopic pregnancy where the egg gets stuck in the fallopian tubes and they don't even have okays for you to get an abortion for that. It's just like so sad and so wrong on so many levels. And so the fact that if you get pregnant by accident, when it happened to me, my birth control failed because I had used the Diva Cup. I didn't know it would move the IUD. So I was trying to be safe. It wasn't just like a, hey, crazy moment thing. And that's what people will jump to. You should keep your legs closed, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And always blaming the woman, right? It's always my fault, or not my fault, but a woman's fault, right? So anyway, you think about that concept that now, even if you're prepared and an accident happens, you cannot go back on that decision, which is awful. How many women do you think are going to want to sleep with men now casually? Men already complain a lot about not getting enough sex. Do you think that anybody is going to, imagine that just as a very basic concept.
I mean,
and the suspicion and the hatred, it's just crazy to me that it's just exasperated.
It's so controversial. It leads me to, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but it leads me to believe there must be, it's just so, I'm one of these people that
there's no reason why it would be overturned. I'm totally agreeing with you.
They're doing it for a reason, right? To create a divide. And there's a bigger thing at play, I think.
It's a huge divide. It's crazy. It's like, why would this thing out of anything? And I know, I'm going to go into the conspiracy theories with you.
No, go for it. I like this. Let's do it.
Because this upset me so much. I'm like, because and this might turn so many people off, I don't know, but I'm not vaccinated, and I chose not to get vaccinated. Okay, so here we go, and this is what we were saying. You know, I was in Florida, thank God for this also, during both of these things that happened to me in my life. People were chanting about bodily autonomy, like we should be able to decide. You know, there are religious excuses for other vaccinations that you can't get, and then this was all of a sudden forced. But then when this comes, it's like, you know, so like, this is what we said during the mask thing, is like, they're going to continue taking away our rights. And people were like, no, they're not going to, it's not going to happen. And look at what's happening. Look at what's happening. Everybody who voted for the vaccination to go through are the ones who are upset about the abortion thing.
Same thing. And I think, I mean, they try to control, they've always tried to control us, but they're upping the ante, and there's a bigger thing at play without a shadow of a doubt. And that's why, you know, the school system, you know, getting a job, going to university, getting married is seen as success. And actually you have to play your own game. You can't, and it's very difficult. And I think I'm actually worried about the future without being too doom and gloom. I think, you know, we've got to stand up for our rights a bit more and see the bigger picture.
Absolutely. No, and this is totally scary. The fact that this law has been overturned is just very, very scary, because
what's next, you know?
Exactly. What's next? And this is what we were trying to say during the mask era. We were saying, like, what's next? You can't even imagine, like, this is how it starts. Little by little, this is how it starts. And they make you believe that you're an awful bad person. Yeah. And now it's like COVID just basically freaking disappeared, didn't it?
Yeah.
It disappeared, didn't it? Yeah. Now all the rules are going away. Look at it. Look at, where are the booster shots now? Where's all the hype now? It's like so stupid.
It seems to be coming back in this country, but also, you know, there's the war, there's the cryptocurrency, the food prices, the petrol prices. They're making life impossible for us.
Yeah. And like Patrick Bet-David said, the definition of a recession is like 2 quarters behind or something. So he said, what was it, like July 1st or July 2nd? The recession has officially started. And you know, it's not to like go into like an apocalypse fear mentality, but like people need to wake up and be aware of like the bigger picture, that we need to break out of the matrix, right? Yeah. Stop believing just at face value what everything is said, and question everything, and be open to everything, and protect yourself.
Yeah, I think it takes a certain type of person to do that. That's like being curious. I think that's also going back to kind of the stuff that you do. I think as well, in order to grow, you have to be curious. You have to lean into your. I mean, we were talking off air before about anxiety and all that kind of stuff. And talk to us about kind of the specific stuff you do with men. Then is it more kind of like dealing with lack of purpose, anxiety, and what sort of situations have you come up against? Because you know, men traditionally are hard to get anything out of, aren't they? Well, they tend to be anyway.
You could say that the men who come to me, I think I've created a safe space enough where it's just a safe space. So easily they are able to open up and kind of talk about things. I notice that there are common patterns with men about what they struggle with. And because of the lack of acceptance around emotions and personal desire, there's a lot of disconnect from self and disconnect from true relationships. So that means a lot of the life is based on external validation and achievement. What kind of car do I have? Education, job title, money.
Yes.
And when all of that is fulfilled at about 40 years old, right? That's when we hit the midlife crisis. They realize, I'm disconnected from my wife. I'm disconnected from my children. I'm disconnected from my purpose. I don't know who I am anymore. I did all this stuff and I thought my life was supposed to be good and perfect, but I don't know who I am. And so really it's kind of about, where are you at right now? Ideally, where would you like to be at, or where would you like to go? How would you like to feel? And then we analyze like the behaviors that got us there and change them. And now, you know, after 2.5 years, I was talking about a lot of the same things, but now it's also guiding men through a more spiritual container. So understanding energetics, understanding, you know, like manifestation and abundance, and just channeling. And it might sound woo-woo for me to like talk about channeling and stuff, but
the truth is, as human beings, we male and female, we both have masculine and feminine energy, right? And actually, I've noticed a real shift in women coming forward and showing their masculine energy. And actually, if anything, when women show masculine energy, they're powerful as anything. And I think it's striking that right balance. And with a male as well, having that feminine energy, I think there's an interesting change in society, actually, with equality and equity and all that kind of stuff. And actually, women can be very powerful, just as powerful as men in a different way. But also, a man showing his feminine energy, that can be powerful as well, right?
Right. But I'm really glad that you brought that up, because the way that women are coming into their masculine energy now and the way that men are coming into their feminine energy now is actually showing a total imbalance, because divine feminine energy is powerful.
Yes.
But what women are doing now is we are leaning into our masculine. And when women lean into their masculine, it's out of pure survival. It's out of pure defense. It's out of pure protection. And now more than ever, women are going to go completely into their masculine, which doesn't allow for expression of the feminine, which you might not see as a bad thing from the outside, because you're like, yeah, women are the CEOs and they're the leaders and whatever, but they're not doing it from a place of the feminine. They're doing it from a place of the masculine, which will burn them out. And it burns men out too, because the men who are not in their balance of divine masculine feminine will be pushed into their feminine, and then they will feel weak. They will not be in their purpose, So it's like we're in total imbalance, and it's because of all the chaos going on in society right now. Doesn't allow for just natural expression, right? So we're being divided, and it's pushing females into and it's just this whole Roe versus Wade thing pushes us way into the masculine. It's just survival mode. It doesn't allow for love. It doesn't allow for creation. It pushes men away, and it says, oh, we can like take over the world by ourselves, which is completely untrue. And it's just all based out of fear.
I think you're spot on. I think our true potential, I think as human beings, we're only allowed to use 10, 15, 20% of our real potential, because I think we're suppressed, we're conditioned, we're indoctrinated to be certain people. And it's fascinating when you kind of see that and relinquish it, when you start to tune in. You talked about spirituality as well. I'm not particularly religious, but last couple of years, I've really tuned into my spirituality, done some praying and gratitude and universe and kind of tapping into that kind of stuff. I don't care if people think it's woo-woo. It's true for me. I think when you start to look inward and you find that, you realize, fuck, there's a lot of power out there that you can actually tap into. And that's when it gets really exciting. And when I do that, when all the shit's going on in the world, it makes me feel actually there is something higher than this. And that does help me personally. So.
Absolutely. I love that you said that too, because at another level of spiritual like enlightenment, let's just say, you start to understand things in a way that sounds crazy in the logical sense, because when you're in the human 3D, you panic. You're like, the world is falling to shit. Everything's chaos. This is so wrong. It needs to be this way. And you're very divisive and you're very polarizing, and you see things as good or bad, right or wrong. When you dive into yourself, into your knowing, the world doesn't have a moralistic code of good versus bad. The world, consciousness seeks to express itself and experience itself in every facet. So there is no good or bad. There is no right or wrong. Things just are. And you see that everything has its divine part to play. So even though we are very polarizing right now and it may seem chaotic, it is happening for a greater shift.
Yes.
So we might not know where it's going, but it's shifting, and it's an experience, and it's happening. And to be stressed about it doesn't actually do anything for you. But finding yourself and finding your own peace and your truth within the chaos that's going on helps to light a candle in whatever darkness is around you.
Yeah. On the darkness point, what's been your darkest moment in your life?
I've had so many. I don't know if I could pinpoint one darkness moment. That might sound like really, I don't know, negative to some people, but just like looking at the reality, I've had a lot of low moments in my life. I've attempted suicide multiple times in my life. And I don't know if I even see those as the lowest moments.
Talk to me about one of those and why, and then talk to me about the lowest moments. You can't just dismiss that.
I don't know, because I think that there is I just want to say, I feel like there's a lot of misconception about suicide, at least for me. It's not like you are so sad. For me, it wasn't like I was just so sad and so depressed and things like that. It's almost, you get to this point where you feel like my purpose on this earth is nothing, and I don't feel like I'm contributing, and I don't feel connected to anyone, and I don't feel like anyone would miss me. In fact, I feel like they'd be better off without me, and I'm tired of kind of doing this. What's the point? And it feels very logical, actually. It doesn't feel like sad, oh my God, I hate myself. It feels just logical, like this is a natural ending point. When a lot of people,
like a relief almost, you know?
yeah, you do get relieved because you feel like, oh my God, finally, like you're like, what's the point of dealing with this? It's like so useless. If nobody's benefiting and I'm not benefiting, then like, what's the point? Right. So that's why I don't see it as like one of my lowest points, because obviously it didn't happen.
On that point, I mean, I talked about my own suicide attempts, and I think you're right. You know, it's the problem I've got with people judging people who have suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideation is that I got a lot of flack when I first did it a couple of years ago. They said, "You've got kids. How can you be so selfish?" But you don't.
They say, "How can you be so selfish?"
Don't know what it's like, and it's not selfish at all. It's very hard to explain, isn't it? But do you want to try?
Yeah, it's like, it really makes me angry when I actually fought with a counselor, not a counselor, like my physical health ed teacher in ninth grade about this. I debated with him because he said, it's a really selfish thing to do. And I said, no, it's not. And he's like, yes, it is. It's very selfish. You leave everyone behind. Yeah. I'm like, it's selfish to say, you need to stay here because when you're gone, I'm going to be in pain. That to me sounds selfish. When you're in a suicidal mindset, or like when we've experienced it, you're not thinking, hey, I want to cause everybody pain. You're thinking, by me going, it's going to be better for everybody. I am a burden. I am a burden on this earth. I'm a dark spot, because even if you don't feel like what you're doing is a burden, you know that your energy is so dark, it creates a cloud. You know this, and you're like, this is my attempt to do something good for everybody else. And this isn't condoning suicide. I don't want anybody to think that. That's not, if you're feeling suicidal, this is not permission. This is like saying, we understand how you feel. And also there's a much brighter side to the other side of this.
100%. Well, you know, I'm touched that you sort of mentioned that. It's not an easy thing to say. And, you know, I think people get strength from that. And, but you talked about other dark moments. Whilst we're on the dark subject, what other dark moments have you had?
Well, I'm going to be honest, like out of all the dark moments in my life, and I think this is kind of funny, so I'm laughing, is like, it wasn't like my parents going to jail or, you know, things like that. It's really like endings of relationships that I thought were going to be my forevers, or that I had put so much of myself into. I think that those are deaths you experience when you're alive and when you're so young too. It sounds like so childish to say that, but like heartache for me is like one of the hardest things for me to deal with. It's so painful.
Sure. Why do you think that is?
Probably just because in this lifetime, that's something I need to learn how to transmute. And just my, you know, as you had mentioned, like as a child, I never had consistent flow of love. I never had like a dedicated person. I always felt alone. So the second that I feel like I found someone who can be like a family for me, a close person who I can invest in and be attached to, the second they leave, I just feel the abandonment probably all over again.
Right.
And it just totally makes me feel like I will never have the experience that other people had, probably.
That's really interesting. I can relate to that, because I always used to think, you know, when I get a girlfriend or when I get this, I will start to feel this. And we all both know that's wrong. But I've got divorced 3 or 4 years ago. I spent a lot of time on my own last 3 years. I've dated and stuff like that, and it's gone well. But I've enjoyed, for the first time in my life, I've enjoyed time just to be on my own and that kind of stuff. And I've reached a level of happiness and joy that I've never had before, and that's wonderful. And up until recently, I've always felt that I've never needed anyone to make me really happy, but I've changed my mind recently, because I feel that I've reached a certain point, and now I'm so ready. I don't feel I can be really happy unless I share my life with somebody. So I've kind of flipped that around. I want to get your lens on that in terms of the experience you've gone through around. I think you can be happy in both, but surely the ultimate is to find somebody, but that shouldn't be the be all and end all either. So it's difficult.
Yeah, no, literally, I had the exact same experience because my whole life was focused on hyper independence. I was like, I don't need anybody. And from like ages like 18 to 24, I was abstinent. I dated some people, but like I was celibate the whole 5 years. I didn't have a boyfriend or anything. So like I developed a lot of alone time just at that young age where it's like, you think that you'd be out experimenting, whatever. And I just kept to myself. And even now, so like I'm 28, and just this last weekend, so like 3 days ago, I had this realization of, because I was also a world traveler too. And my idea was like, oh, I'm going to see every country in the world. I'm going to do this and that. And like freedom is my number one thing. And I was like, I just can't be with anybody. They're going to hold me down. They're going to hold me back. But recently coming into meeting someone and having this fulfillment that I've never had before, where it's like my freedom can meet partnership, and having that be an eye opener of like, oh no, I actually don't need and want these other things, but like I could have a family, like maybe I could have children, maybe I could have this, and not have it be like, oh, I need this as a codependent thing, but like this is a part of me that I didn't know existed for me. Right. And it's a beautiful. So I totally feel like the same way of like, I do want a community. I want someone to be a best friend. I don't want to die alone like I always thought I did.
How do we avoid repeating patterns, like going for the same kind of relationship and being, so for you being codependent, what advice could you give people? Because I think what happened, we are a product of how we're managed, how we're schooled, how we're taught, how we're parented, right? So we've got to unwire ourselves. But I think it takes years to do that, doesn't it? So
I don't think it takes years.
Okay.
I just disagree, because I've trained people on how to notice the patterns very quickly in a span of like 12 weeks. But the truth is, like, you have to know that no matter who you are, even if you're in a good relationship, you're operating off of patterns, because your brain is like a computer. So whatever you learn in childhood becomes your template, and the brain is so efficient, it doesn't like just question itself. It's going to run on that same template until you hit a block that's like, this isn't working for me anymore. So even if you're in a good relationship, observe the patterns, observe how you're fulfilled, how you're loved, what you don't like, what you do like.
Yeah.
And the truth is, you can work with a coach as much as you want and observe these patterns, but the true work does come within relationship, because they're going to show you as a mirror, like what is the thing you need to correct. And if you're in a toxic relationship right now, and I know that you've experienced this, and I've experienced this too, if there's one unhealthy partner, there's two. You are not absolved of unhealthy behaviors just because your partner might be a narcissist. You are a match to that. So this isn't blaming ourselves, but it's taking responsibility.
100% looking inward. I mean, I think, as you say, we both had toxic relationships and everything else, but I, up until recently, was always blaming the other person or pointing the finger, and a lot of that was justified. Then I thought, actually, what role did I play in that? Yes. And actually, when I, even though I felt some of the stuff that happened to me was very unfair, I still had choices. I maybe could have done things differently, or done sooner, or stood up to. And I think some people will. I think until you get to that level, I don't think you're ever going to move on, are you? Really?
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And so this is like, there's the path of discovery, right? It's like, first you have to validate and understand that you're in a painful situation, because I think a lot of people don't, right? Like, we will gaslight ourselves, we'll ignore it, and this is fine. Yes. And then you wake up and you're like, okay, this is not fine. And then you get into the blaming role, right? Like you need that stage, right? Like, this person did me wrong here, and here, and it was so unfair. And then once you validated that pain, you can be like, okay, but what part of me called them to me? You know, like how was I a match for a narcissist? I'm probably a people pleaser. I'm probably someone who doesn't 100%. Have boundaries. I'm probably someone who doesn't have very high self-esteem. Just like there's a lot of quote unquote nice guys, and they feel like all women are shit. And I'm just a nice guy. I'm a simple guy. I'll treat a woman like a queen, but you're not having boundaries. You're giving everything to someone who is taking advantage of you, and you're blaming all women for that. But really, if you were in your power, in your masculine, you wouldn't be attracted to that person.
I mean, narcissists, by the very nature, some of the stuff they do and they say is horrendous. But what I've learned is, it is like, as you say, a mirror. They are almost teaching us and giving us gifts around, actually, some of the things they're saying might actually have an element of truth in it, mate, and actually explore that, you know?
Well, you wouldn't be attracted to it if it didn't have a little bit of what you needed. And that's the thing. It's like, healthy people are not attracted to narcissists because intuitively you can sense that something is off. You can sense that something is off. As manipulated as someone is, when you really trust yourself and you get in touch with your intuition, you will sense it, and something in you will say, stop, pause, like, take a look at this.
Self-awareness never hurt anybody. It's accountability. So talk to us about some of the poorest decisions you might have made in your life.
Well, the poorest times in my life have been when I've ignored my intuition and my desires. So when I moved out of my small town, Wisconsin, 2 days after I graduated high school at 18 to California. And at that point, my relationship that I'd moved out there with like ended fairly quickly. And I was just listening to everybody else, the old narrative of like, you've got to find a job to pay your bills. I wanted to be a singer and actress, but I listened to what they said and I got the first job that I kind of could, which was working at Walmart as an overnight stalker in Anaheim, California. And I was there for 2 years and it was like the worst time period of my life because the whole time I had this little voice in my head that was, why are you here? Why are you doing this? You should just leave. Just don't go into work. Just go chase your dreams. And you think that you're just saying this, but it's really your intuition screaming at you. And because I was constantly ignoring it, I actually ended up developing a very strong eating disorder disguised as like a fitness thing. But really, I was just like not eating. And I got down to like 88 pounds and I like really almost killed myself, I think.
Wow.
Because I just wasn't trusting that I could figure out my own path. So like then one day from the universe, I got a call to go to this like audition. It was in Hollywood. And I found someone who connected me to get a place there in Hollywood. And from then on, I said, I'm never, ever going against my intuition or the things that I don't want ever again, because this was a very hard 2-year lesson. And since then I have I've quit jobs when I felt the time was right with no plan. And I've done this like 4 times in my life and every single time it's worked out for me better. And so like those are like the poorest decisions I think I've made. And I think anybody can make but I guess I needed it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think trusting your gut. I think that come more so from, we talk about relationships and the importance of relationship. I think the best relationship you can have is with yourself.
Oh, for sure.
First. So talk to us about that journey in terms of probably not even knowing how to love yourself, let alone get into loving yourself. How's that been for you?
Oh, yeah. Oh, I love that you brought this up because I'm really diving into this in a very delicious way right now, because I used to think that feminine energy was weak. And so as a female, thinking that feminine energy was weak, I was like, I'm going to stay in my masculine because my feminine is weak. Like I love being the hustler and the business person and making money and doing all this by myself. And then, through coaching and everything, I realized that like it was all stemming from, feeling like I could be weak and not loving myself and not honoring like who I am as a woman. So like for me, the self-love journey grew beyond just like loving my body and how I looked and things like that, because I used to feel really ugly and negative about myself. And I would talk to myself this way. So that was like the start of the journey, is like, I'm going to love myself no matter what. Like I appreciate myself. But once I started accepting myself as a woman, and I think when a lot of men will start accepting themselves as men, as strong, powerful men, whatever, chaos or monster is inside or feminine feelings are inside, just fully accepting that. Like the other weekend I made a yoni sculpture with a group of women. Like it was very empowering and just shedding shame. Yeah. So like, I think that you really have to go through a journey of not just saying affirmations. Like everybody says like, oh, I love myself and everything I hate about myself, I'm going to say I love in the mirror, but fully accepting yourself as a human, but yourself as a soul. Like, who am I as a man? Who am I as a woman? And just, this is beautiful. I was created in divine perfection, and I'm going to honor that for what it is.
I do that. I also kind of parent myself. Sometimes I don my dad hat for myself, and I talk to my own inner child and kind of hug myself. I never had that, and I think sometimes we have to play our own parent, right? And also our own critic and our own coach. We have to be different people for ourselves.
Oh yeah, I talk to myself all the time.
I think it's the first sign of sanity, not insanity. It's great to do that, right?
I think so, because like you said, sometimes you have to parent yourself. I will notice at times, like I'll get whiny or like I'll want something and I'll be like, okay, this is inner child Elise throwing a fit, a fit. And I'll be like, hey, what do you need? Like, what do I need to give myself right now? And, or like, if I'm going into a negative spiral of like, oh my God, my business is falling apart or I'm not getting enough money. And I'll be like, Elise, how can you transmute this energy right now? Like, is this actually serving you? And that's like higher self going into human Elise. Like, why aren't you trusting? Like, what about this moment is not allowing you to feel safe? And so I love that you do that as well.
Brilliant. We're kind of coming towards the end. This is fascinating. I dislike small talk. I love conversations like this. So like honestly, I say this to all my guests, but with you, I could talk to you but forever. It's great. Moving on to more positive stuff. We talked about your darkness and the other stuff. What about your pride? What's been your proudest moment, would you say?
I am very, very proud that I have listened to my intuition for most of my life. And I did things my way, because everybody wanted to go to college in my high school. And at a certain point, I was like printing off all these papers to apply. And I knew I didn't want to go because of what I wanted to go for. It just seemed stupid. And my counselor said, college is right for a lot of people, but is it right for Elise? And I just said no. And that was like the start of me just like doing things my way. And now I've done odd jobs, and I've done corporate jobs, and I start my business, and I'm so proud of myself that I put the blinders on to what the world is saying. And I don't have any knowledge of that. And I just go with what my soul is, because at the end of the day, I know that my life is so fulfilling to me. And Brilliant. I'm so proud of that, because I don't need to live up to anybody's standard. And I hope that anybody listening to this can embody that, because it's so powerful to feel proud of the life that you've built, even if it's not up to the standard of everybody else's life.
Well, it's the only person that standard that you should worry about is your own, right? And everyone's is easier to say than do. We get that. What about purpose? This is the Purpose-Led Leadership podcast. What is your purpose, would you say?
I don't know if you can put into work. I think everybody's purpose is honestly just to be authentically their own light. Because I could say my purpose right now is helping men transcend trauma and pain, which is very true in a sense. But this purpose could change over time. Yes. And I don't know what my greatest legacy will be. And you don't know what your greatest legacy will be either. But whatever you are doing in the moment that makes you feel alive and authentic, I think that is your purpose. And you just live it until it morphs into something else.
I agree with that, and it constantly evolves. I want to go a little bit deeper actually on that point. This whole kind of like improving men's lives and that kind of stuff. I want to know intrinsically why. I know that men chose you. You say that, but I think there's more to it. Do you think there's more to it? Because
yeah, of course. Well, I feel like I suffered as a child due to the inability of my parents to understand, and if I can help men become better fathers, then the children do not have to suffer. And then we change the whole entire next generation of how children are. I feel like I'm going to start crying. It's kind of like a redemption of my childhood, a redemption of your childhood to 100%. Save the sons and daughters of the future. I don't really want to have children of my own, but I feel very, very good the more men I can help, knowing that their children are taken care of. It's really for the children.
Why I believe in something higher than us and the purpose, because what happened to you was horrific, but it was a gift, because look what you're doing now to help everybody else. So if anything, it's something to behold, I think. And what I like about you is you've used that to transform into a positive. You haven't stuck in that victim pity state. And I think, you've got to take a lot of credit for that.
Well, thank you. And I believe that as souls, we choose it, right? We choose our parents, we choose the outcome that we have. And some people might not agree with this because they've had very, very, very horrific childhoods. But as a soul, your only intention is to expand. And so as you continue to evolve and you kind of zoom out from this perspective, you have such a sense of gratitude. Like, thank you for being the catalyst for my soul's purpose on this round of earth.
But also, do you find it challenging to? I think there's you can do that as your purpose, but there's no reason why you shouldn't sacrifice your own joy for that as well. And I think that's the next level.
What do you mean you shouldn't sacrifice your own joy?
Because I think sometimes we get so deep into our purpose because we feel as if we want to help other people, and that's right. But also we need to help ourselves on that journey as well. Make sure we're not, it's so far into our purpose, we're actually foregoing our own self-worth as well.
Well, absolutely. Your purpose should stem from your joy. Like, if you are not living in your joy and your desire, then you've derailed yourself. Your purpose cannot be truly fulfilled if you are not a fulfilled person. I just don't believe it. Absolutely. You're out of balance.
Totally. So just a few more questions. What do you think women can do more of to help men in general?
So this is like two-part. I think women also need to do their part in doing their own personal work and self-development so that you can embody your divine feminine. Understand what it's like to be in your embodied feminine, not just survival masculine, and not just like shadow feminine, which is like victim mentality. I need someone to take care of me. I need someone to love me. I need men to step up, like always pointing the finger. Anytime we blame somebody else, we have a lot of work to do. So there's that part. The second part is like truly just on a logical standpoint, human side for men, be open to men being vulnerable, encourage vulnerability, create a safe space, check in on your guy friends. Do not partner with the social norms and narratives that say, grow some balls, don't be a pussy, don't be a little, beep, don't be, do not play into those. When they happen, you have to be the one to step in and say, no, that's actually not okay. I support you for who you are. And also, like, I know this is like probably too much of a digression for the end of this conversation, but there's a lot of shame around sexuality for both women and men. Male performance, there's a lot of negativity around men's size, if it matters, like, how they show up in the bedroom. And we need to like eliminate those societal stigmas if we want to also feel safe in the bedroom. I think a lot of those things stem from just our own insecurity and shame in the bedroom, because if you feel totally comfortable, you will not think about those things.
Sure. And in reverse, what can men do for women more of, do you think?
Do the work.
Yes.
They need to. Men, the best thing that you can do for women is invest in yourself and your own healing and self-development, because we don't need any more advocates that are disengaged from their own emotional attunement. We need people who can be present, who can show up, because the best thing you can do for the feminine is show up in your masculine. And when you're not in touch with your masculine, you're just showing up in the feminine, and that doesn't help anybody. Just pushes women more into the masculine, which men do not like.
I mean, this conversation has been fascinating. Thank you so much. I would recommend any of my male friends and female friends to you for your coaching, because it's amazing. Before we go, what would you like to leave the audience with in terms of any advice, any kind of sort of passing words? Because it's a difficult time at the moment for everybody, right?
Yes. Well, I would like to say, pleasure is your birthright. And that might seem like a foreign concept to a lot of people. But no matter what's going on in the world, you can always create your own island of joy. And that will help change the world far more than being stressed out about all the negativity that's going around. So invest in your own personal joy, community, and well-being. And you will see that there are so many lights at the end of the tunnel.
Fantastic. Absolute pleasure. Where's the best place for people to find you? Is it LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Elise Michaels, Micheals on all of them. I'm here.
I'm so excited to watch your future journey. An absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was amazing.
Thank you.